You just hit play to a TechVibe Deep Dive, exploring data centers and their increasing demand for energy. I'm your host, Jonathan Kirsting with the Pittsburgh Technology Council and TechVibe Radio, and we are partnering with Comcast Business to bring you a front row seat to the innovations driving resiliency, efficiency, and sustainability across this industry. So what if the future of energy storage could eliminate the risk of fire, reduce cooling costs, and supercharge data center performance, all without a single chemical reaction? If you're navigating the challenges of powering energy-hungry data centers or renewable energy systems, this episode is a must listen. We are welcoming Steve Wittingham of LaFace and McGovern so you can discover how Emtel's breakthrough solid-state supercapacitor technology could reshape how we store and distribute electricity, cutting costs and boosting sustainability, all right here in Pennsylvania. Keep on listening to learn how this non-chemical, heat-free solution outperforms lithium-ion batteries in safety and efficiency. Understand how multiple daily charge cycles and simultaneous charge/discharge capabilities unlock massive operational flexibility, and discover how strategic power storage and peak shaving can deliver major ROI on grid resiliency, especially for hyperscale data centers and renewable energy producers. So keep on listening to hear how LaFace is helping reinvent the power grid with groundbreaking tech that's as smart as it is sustainable. Let's welcome Steve to the show today.
So LaFace and McGovern for 48 years has been in business primarily as a lighting and architectural lighting sales rep. Okay. Up until very recently, that's really what they did, lighting and lighting control. Within the last 2 months, they, through other partners in the lighting industry, who stumbled upon this Emtel Energy USA solution, they teamed up and partnered with these other lighting professionals. There's 4 of them in the United States who are taking this brand new technology to market across all of North America. We have, amongst the 4 agencies, we have no territories other than all of North America. Technology like the world hasn't seen.
That's what I'm talking about. So just give me the pitch for the technology. This is not a battery. It's a supercapacitor.
Yeah, I know. And I sound like a goofball every time I say that, but it is supercapacitor based, solid state, electrostatic energy source, right? And the key differentiator there with electrostatic versus electrochemical is electrostatically, our modules that are filled with this synthetic graphene are collecting the energy via a bunch of electrons that are attaching to all the molecules within the graphene, versus a chemical reaction in a typical battery, such as lithium ion, which is a chemical reaction that is actually happening to create energy, create heat, and ultimately deliver that charge. So electrostatically, we're able to do it without any heat gain whatsoever. Because there are no chemical, there is absolutely no risk of fire or thermal heat gain. And honestly, that's a big deal in some of these data centers, because when you think about the operation expenses or the OpEx for some of these big time data centers, they spend a lot of their money strictly on HVAC cooling to control the temperature of these batteries that are harnessing all this energy. So what we found, actually, just a fun stat, is that we can save the customer approximately 4% on their total operating expenses by using our solution versus a typical lithium ion or lead acid battery, because we're not producing any heat and we don't need supplemental cooling.
And then also, where I find this technology so interesting is when you say it doesn't produce heat. I mean, we've seen in the news how like a laptop battery will catch fire on a plane. It's a lithium battery, or like e-bikes catching on fire. Like, these things can happen. A fire anywhere is not good, obviously, but a fire in a data center could literally put that data center out of business. So mitigating that risk, that level of fire risk, it's got to be, I think, a game changer.
It's huge. And that exact scenario happened in California over the summer and was the spur of one of those wildfires. And that came from a battery product. So to mitigate that is wonderful. Even if you don't take into account the worst case scenario, which would be fire or an explosion, the fact that ours don't have any heat, you're not afraid of fire or anything like that, it enables us in a typical solution, big time solution. Let's talk data center, just sure I know what that is.
Yep.
A lot of these companies will have these batteries stacked outside, forming their own microgrids, what have you, to power the facility. With a typical lithium ion solution, with all their containers filled with their batteries, by code, they are required to have enough space between each container that you can actually fit fire trucks through them, so that in the event of a fire, they can put water on it. But honestly, I don't know why, because water doesn't put out.
Put out a lithium ion.
So with our solution, we can save a significant amount of site work via reducing the footprint, because our units or our containers can be stacked as closely together as 6 feet apart. They can actually be stacked on top of one another like Legos. The only distance that they need is about 6 feet, just enough to open the doors to enter the
container. So you can put a lot more capacity on a smaller footprint then.
100%. You're disturbing less land and you're having to do way less earthwork than otherwise.
Now, the other thing that I find really cool about this technology is, and this is something that I've just started to do a little research on, so obviously correct me here if I'm wrong, but if the data center is using lithium ion batteries as their power source to hold that power and then be able to then get the power out of it to charge the data center, you can basically do that one time a day. There's only the cycle is very long between filling back up and you being able to just charge it to actually power the servers. Where with your technology, with the supercapacitor, you get 3 or 4 times X that you can do that. So you can.
Correct. It can cycle 4 times a day without voiding any warranties. And that's the thing. Not only do your typical battery solution take longer to charge, which they do, they'll actually lose their warranty if they cycle more than 1 time per day. And there's enough electronics within those batteries, so the manufacturer can always come back and void that warranty if they're trying to overuse their piece of product.
Exactly.
Ours can go, they're warranted up to 4 times a day. In certain cases, they can go more. And in fact, the beauty of them is they can be charging while they're also discharging and providing power to the power source simultaneously.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. So it can return at the same time. It can actually take energy in as it's releasing the energy that it just stored.
100%.
I'm thinking then from an ecosystem standpoint, where we got to get tons of energy to these data centers. So they all need a place in order to hold this energy so they can use it as it's needed and meter out. Batteries and capacitors are just a massive piece of this. It's not just producing enough electrons. It's also being able to store them and then meter them out as they're needed. So the whole idea of holding like a battery or a supercapacitor, this is actually huge to us being able to keep data centers running and fully charged.
And the best part of it is it's a sustainability initiative, but it's also a financial benefit as well. As you guys know, many of the utility providers have staggered utility rates. So you're going to be paying more for your electricity during times of peak demand than you would, say, in the middle of the night when the demand isn't as high on the distribution and transmission lines. So when you implement these, even without the addition of any renewable source, solar or wind, even if you're just charging these supercapacitors via the traditional grid, there is an ROI on this by using the grid to charge them at night when the utility rates are the cheapest. And then during the day, when you would otherwise get hit with heavy demand charges or just even increased rates, utilizing that stored energy during those key times that is pre-programmed through the system to deploy to do that, what they call peak shaving in time of use deployment.
the idea that especially if you can do that up to 4 different times a day, you can really get tricky with how you're able to charge when it's absolutely the cheapest to charge and then deploy the stored energy when it's really expensive.
You hit the nail on the head.
And it's also that makes the grid more resilient because you're putting less stress on that grid in those peak hours when everyone's trying to use their air conditioners at home and all that good stuff. And we know how much more taxing, especially the hyperscale data centers are when it comes to the amount of power they got to pull from that grid. So this is really game changing technology. It appears to me.
Yes, sir. And to take it a step further,
Yeah.
most solar farms today are strictly used for what they call net metering, where it's collecting whoever the developer or owner is, the solar panels are collecting the energy and they have what they call a PPA or a power purchase agreement with the utility. So they're collecting it and they're distributing it out to the grid that, as you and I know it, for a certain fee structure, right? Whatever their cost per kilowatt hour is. However, very few of those solar farms are harnessing that energy, storing it, and saving it for later. So and it's funny, the renewables are actually putting more of a strain on the traditional grid just because the grid was not built for
Yeah.
all the different renewables, right? So if you think about it, in the middle of the day, the sun's shining, right? It's collecting all this energy and it's putting it into the grid. And that's great. That's better than nothing, but it's not saving it for when we really need it. We need it in the morning when we wake up. We need it in the evenings when everybody gets home and turns on their lights and their appliances and everything. Those are two of the typical times when the grid is strained the most. So to be able to store that energy, not overload the grid when it's not needed, and deploy that power when it is a huge benefit.
Back up. This is cool. I didn't think about this. So the idea being that you can take this supercapacitor and put it on site, like at a solar farm or at a windmill. So as it produces that power, it puts that power into the supercapacitor so it can hold the power that it generated and then put it out onto the grid at the right time.
Yes, sir.
Oh, that's cool. Wow. So there's a use for this on both ends here, where right as it's coming into the grid and coming off the grid, right?
In fact, now most solar farms or private developers are not implementing this right now unless they have a specific microgrid in a specific neighborhood or data center campus that they're specifically trying to power. But the people who are using this are your large scale utilities, right? Especially folks that are tasked with the creation or the power production end of things, right?
So I can see why you're very excited with you're able to get behind this Emtel technology, just overall about our region in particular and how our ecosystem works, how our energy works here, how we're able to produce a lot of power here, and where you think the opportunities are for us to be an all the above type of a energy provider for not just ourselves, but exporting our power out to the other data centers in Virginia, where we learned that in a couple of years, they're going to run out of power. So they're going to need power from us. And so having your solution in this ecosystem, I think helps them meet those crazy demands and so forth.
Yeah, for sure. Listen, we are specifically in Western Pennsylvania in this region, incredibly fortunate to be sitting on the hotbed of natural gas that we are. And for those reasons, especially around here, our power costs are much less significant than other parts of the country. So we're very lucky that we have the ability to produce that power, whether it's localized on a site like we're talking about in Homer City or even at Fort Cherry with the on-site gas-fired power plants. That's very nice. To be able to save that cheap energy and distribute it across PJM's network puts us at a distinct advantage compared to the rest of the country.
Absolutely. Yeah. And what I think is so cool is the way your solution allows them to hold on to that power. They can get it produced when it's the cheapest to produce it, hold on to it, and then send it out when it's optimal time to send it out. It seems like a key piece in this equation for us to have the power, get it out there at the right time, and be very environmentally friendly. It'd be great for the bottom line about the companies on both sides of this thing. It's interesting stuff. Thanks again for listening to this TechVibe Deep Dive, exploring data centers and their increasing demand for energy. We couldn't do it without our partner, of course, Comcast Business, to bring you these important conversations about the innovation that's driving resiliency, efficiency, and sustainability across the data center and energy industries. I look forward to seeing you on the next one.